to change it at all.
And when I say hold yourself, I want all of you get ready to stop. When I say stop, don't move. And when I say get it, I want all of y'all to go boogie. Hold it now. Boogie woogie.
We're good.
Hello, Internet! Welcome to Discover RPG, where myself and my co-host discuss D&D and RPG subjects, and generally shoot the shit and have a good time on this a Wednesday afternoon. Thank you for joining us. If you're live, thank you for joining us on your probably lunch break or avoiding work. That is okay. I'm Angela, and my co-host Logan. How are you doing today?
Huh? I think your internet decided to be crappy.
No.
I didn't hear anything. You've
How
been
bad?
fine for half an hour. I heard only about every other word there. But that's okay. Hi. I think you asked how I
Hi.
was doing. I am doing very well. I'm going to turn the music back down. I forgot. I turned it up for the thingy, and then I forgot to turn it back down.
I think part of it was because I was streaming Twitch while I was talking,
Oh, well,
which
that's
probably
not good.
wasn't a great idea.
Except that your internet
So
should
none
be
of-
able to handle that just fine. But whatever.
I agree. So was my entire intro shit?
No. Just the last couple of words
Okay.
there, and I think we caught it all. The audience
that's good.
can let me know one way or the other if they
Sure.
if they are in an engaging mood. Otherwise, down in the doobly doo on YouTube, you could say something if you want to say something, but it's not a.
Angela's
you can't
microphone
respond to
starts
that.
working at this timestamp.
There you go. Yeah, you're doing fine now.
Well, great. Well, because I stopped streaming Twitch while I usually
Which you
have
should
that paused.
Easily be able to do. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. I'm in the process of fixing it. Okay.
Yes. I'm gonna get you a new modem. Is that what I hear?
Yeah, something that utilizes upload and download channels more frequently. I need more up channels so that
What you need is all of your neighbors to stop streaming.
yeah,
So
I
be like,
found
"This is
out
my
that
time,
we are a completely anonymous commune of streamers in my neighborhood, and I didn't even know that we have a bunch of like video game streamers and other people who use their webcams for things. And
Whoa.
oh yeah, whoa, that was something new. I'm like, oh, okay, sure. My internet service provider dude was very cool about it. He's like, yeah, she told me what she did. I was like, oh yeah, you need upload speeds, sure. So anyway,
Gotta have that high definition.
right? Me too.
It's fairly
I need
lucrative.
it too.
Yeah, I was gonna say we need it too. Ours is not as lucrative.
We need a cam wizard who's just like, let me enchant your magic items. Please tell me you've
I
seen
know
that.
Nerdsmith is not safe for work, but come on.
That's all they do, though. They just say it in a voice like that.
Oh, just sexy voice all the time?
Yeah.
right.
Please tell me you've seen that McElroy joke of, can you enchant a sword? A real sword? Yeah. Oh, a real sword. Like, I'll show you.
No.
It's amazing.
All right. Show me that later.
Okay.
So,
But I do have show and tells for today.
oh goody. I
As part of our session plan, I have show and tells.
I'm
It's
sure I can
okay.
figure something out.
I have a
Didn't know what show and
steadily
tell today.
I have a steadily accumulating book pile of mythology books at my feet.
A book box
because-
pile?
Yes.
You have a pile of book boxes sitting next to you. Stop
Oh.
buying so many books.
Like 2 meters that way, yes. I don't know why I used meters all of a sudden. That was a weird
I was
choice.
gonna say, can you translate to American for me?
It's fine. On the other side of the room.
Oh.
So what
Wishful thinking. That's why.
what have you been up to this week, Logan? Since last we spoke on this show.
Mostly I've been in website hell.
Yes.
I've been trying to work on getting the Nerdsmith website finally up and running the way it's supposed to be. We are 90% done. I need to wait to hear back from our host to finalize the last little bit. All because we tried to speed it up by switching to a dedicated server and all this great stuff and have server-side caching, and it broke a lot of the site, but we didn't know it, and we just found out. So we are working on fixing it. We're going to lose, unfortunately, a little bit of the functionality, but for the most part, all of the good stuff is going to come with it, and that includes the new membership system and the shop with the products, which we've been waiting for months on me getting the website working well enough that I actually think we can add a shop and not like destroy it. So hopefully all that will be coming. Not that was meant to be a plug. It's just that's what I've been doing. That's literally what I've been doing. I think I spent 16 hours on Monday just working on the website because I had to tear the whole thing down to the foundation and rebuild it. We're still technically under construction. None of the forms work, but we will have all that up and running as soon as the host gets back to me with what the heck I have to do next. So, but we are very, very, very close on that one. Other than that, just hanging out, playing a little D&D. What did we do Sunday? Fun. Oh, I had panels. We were at SAC Anime. We did podcasting 101 at SAC Anime. Very great crowd there. And then an even better crowd for streaming 101 on Sunday. We talked a lot about it, and a lot of good streamers, writers, people that we are looking to tap for that are very interested in becoming a part of some of the new shows we have potentially coming up this year. At least the projects I'm working on. I'm sure they'll be involved with a lot of them. Oh, no, one that you're working on too. We had a writer of short stories that was very excited about being a part of that as well. So those couple of projects are kind of floating out there. So that's where we're at. But things are really good. What have you been up to?
I've been trying to organize my life. Just little things.
Wow, that's a tough one.
No, I will
organize a to-do list.
I will hold off on plugging an app until I'm done with a couple weeks of using it. But I'm using an app right now that gives you both structural and like scheduling stuff to help you plan your day, but then also really well-written little motivational things about
great.
why you
That's
should
awesome.
be doing stuff.
So were you using that app maybe Monday-ish around noon?
Yeah.
Okay, just checking.
but yeah, it's okay. But yeah, the app's interesting, and
cool.
I'm
Is this like that weather app that tells you horrible things about the weather outside?
No.
Have you seen that app? Or like it's like, dude, it's fucking cold as balls outside. Don't go outside. Like, I fucking love that.
No, that is not the app I'm using. I do
I'm saying
follow
it's like that app where it gives you inspirational things. It's like, get up off your ass and go do something.
I do follow a Twitter feed called the Seattle Weather Blog, though. It tells you what the weather is in Seattle.
Wet, I'm guessing.
But it posts
90%.
Well, it gives you the speed of the winds and little well, no, they give you little factoids about the weather on that side of the country and pretty pictures from Seattle, and it's mostly like just a visual blog. It's pretty.
Oh, all right. So it is visual. That's a little different. I just thought like you're just really into weather. I'm like, okay.
No, they wrote it well.
I'll start describing the weather in game a little bit better.
Angela's
really into that, I guess.
It's fun enough and well written enough that I'm willing to pay attention to it.
All right.
Like they were voting on the name for this morning's windstorm. Like, what should we call it?
Cold as balls.
Well, the options were Epiphany Windstorm, Sunday Surprise won.
It's not Tuesday, is it? I'm surprised we have no one in chat yet.
That's okay.
I just, if you're out there, please say something. We need.
No, Logan, this is our opportunity to just have an unfiltered conversation.
Oh,
let's
okay.
just
chat.
That's
what you're looking for. All right, let's chat. Let's wrap.
All right, so let's go over what our session plan is going to be for today.
Playful
we're
banter.
half-assing.
Check.
We're half-assing our playful banter. Yes.
Wait, we always half-ass it. That's the whole point of playful banter. Do you want to script it? That would be horrible.
That's so interesting, Logan. Tell me more.
Logan laughs here. Ah ha ha.
Ah,
Ah.
okay,
That's
so
Draken though.
all right, so Taming of the Brew.
Yes.
This is my little online show and
My
tell.
little online, my little online.
My little Twitter bot. My little Twitter bot. Speaking of, there is a Twitter bot that I want to talk about that I think is really fun, that does D&D stuff. I follow a bunch of random generators, and they are very fun and mostly hilarious, but sometimes very useful if you just want a little pink of inspiration in your brain.
Okay.
Then we have One of Us, which is our how to get people involved in RP if they haven't before or if they're new. So we're going to talk a little bit about helping players who are new to actual in-character role play and how to maybe encourage them a little bit more, or ways to work with a group that are not super interested in being actors, how to still feel like you're able to incorporate the R in RPG. Then we have a review of an article that I found. It is 5 things players should consider before a skill check, which is from a blog called highlevelgames.ca. I thought they had some interesting things in here, and I'm curious of Logan's opinion on a couple of things. There is at least one section in the article that says, check with your DM before you do this. So I want to see what Logan's opinion is on this particular bit of advice that they give for players.
Okay.
Then we have The Easy Way Out, which is going to be talking about a follow-up from last week that we touched on a little bit, which was the process and considerations of banning things at your table. Why, when should you at all? Are there ways to get around needing to ban something at your table, and why people ban things at their table? Then we have challenge time, which I'm very excited about. We were challenged last week to create a guild. So we're going to see what kind of fun guild ideas we came up with. And then finally, we have Funhouse Rules, where we talk about reflavoring, or we're going to talk about reflavoring stuff that exists in canon or rules as written. Today, we're going to talk about reflavoring classes and doing interesting things outside of the bounds of what is technically written down in one of your manuals, but doing something fun with it to give your players and your game a little bit of unique flair.
Got it. Perfect.
I say flavor, and then I lost the V.
Flair
was a good
Flavere.
was a great word. So I want to talk about a Twitter bot that I'm kind of obsessed with. If anybody follows,
I want to talk about changing our server.
Okay.
How's that? Any better? Your ping any better there?
No.
No, it's really not. Okay.
I will do my best to speak slowly so that it's green. Now you should hear me okay. I'm just going to hold my button, and we're going to see if it just lets me continue talking.
Okay.
So I don't let go of my button. This is a new challenge. Can Angela hold the Alt key for 2 hours? All right. So I wanted to share a thing I'm slightly obsessed with, which is the Dungeons and Dragons spell generator Twitter bot. If you follow us on Discover RPG Show on Twitter, you might notice that occasionally I post really random ass GIFs and then post a spell that I find on this bot, because this bot is absolutely delightful. It posts, it looks like at minimum many times a day, it will post a randomly generated spell name. No other context, just the name of the spell. And you can, use it to have fun when you're just trying to be inspired, or you want to I don't know, just have a laugh. Like I am having fun just trying to find matching gifts to go with some of these names.
I think that's a great thing. I love that.
But some of them can be like genuinely inspiring, which I really like. Some of them feel legitimate and not like gobbledygook that a random generator produced.
Like Ice Dream of Evil.
Yeah.
Like Ice Dream of Evil. Pinch of Danger sounds amazing.
The
but
pinch of
sexual.
dangers. So you can find this at Spell Generator on Twitter. Good for you, buddy. That's a good name.
Does GB cast the Lick of Purity?
Probably.
Oh, I love that.
Scepter of Anxieties. You mean any scepter molding. But yeah, so I am a really big fan of having consistent internet speed, but that doesn't always happen for me. But you know what is consistent? Spell Generator on Twitter. It does a really fun job of thinking outside the box of, you know, some of the spells that really exist in D&D are quite silly, but there's some really cool ones in here, like Frizz's Gingerbread Lamp. I want that spell. Or honestly, but then you have really good ones like Mold Beast, which sounds like polymorph for animals, which is kind of terrifying. But one of them I see right now is from like earlier today, Branding Fire. That would actually be like a really legit sounding spell. I would imagine it would be something that maybe is fire damage, Hunter's Mark kind of thing, like a branding smite, but not necessarily directly for paladins. That could be kind of a neat way to do that. But I highly recommend you check out Spell Generator. This is not sponsored, this endorsement, but I do think that you should follow it because they are very fun, and the creator, you do a very good job.
Yes, it's very good. What is GB's Twitter?
Lawful Good Boy.
Thank you.
For anyone who is on here but somehow has not caught on to the fact that we are in a show called Countless Heroes, since we talk about it all the time, Lawful Good Boy is the Twitter handle for one of our characters, GB, who is a sentient dog. He is very adorable.
Most of our characters have their own Twitter accounts. The characters have their own Twitter accounts.
So you can go to Countless Heroes on Twitter and find our list of players. You can find, we actually literally have a list. So you can follow us whenever you want. But yeah, so that was a really short segment. I just really wanted to talk about Spell Generator. It's really fun. There's a bunch of other ones that I'll compile. Most of the other ones that I follow are character generators, and they fill different niches in my need for D&D content. But I will put them all together at some point and present them.
I'm going to follow them. That's some great stuff.
But feel free to join me in the GIF shenanigans for this Twitter bot. I am a big fan of finding fun things for them. I think I'm going to put an Anchorman GIF on Cylinder of Grief so that he can be in a glass case of emotions. But yes, so I will share more when I have more to share. Look how quick that one was. Boom, boom, boom. So, next act is One of Us.
One of Us. What was One of Us? Let's find out here.
Have you ever played with people who haven't roleplayed before? Any newbies? Like, not familiar with the system or with the basic principles of roleplaying?
Yes, I've done a little bit. People who have very little experience. I have a tendency to change the focus to role play in those moments. I have very little experience with it. I'll be honest, and I want to have more. That's going to be something we're going to focus on after Countless Heroes is over, or when I open up some more time in my schedule. So what exactly is our question here?
Ideas for how to encourage people to engage in actual role play, not just maybe how to like introduce them to the concept of role play. If you want to expand on it, I basically had a way of when the time that me and Andy played together, we were it was basically a couples game. There were 4 people, us 2 and another married couple. And Andy and I were really into like actually playing our characters and speaking in first person and engaging with the story if we were our character. But the other couple wasn't that interested in doing that, or they were super not comfortable.
Okay.
And I'm in red.
Yeah.
But they weren't comfortable role playing at all. And so they would just be like, I don't know what I want to do. I want to do this, and then I'm going to do that. And then maybe I'll say something to this person, or I want to convince them to do. And so I'm just trying to think of ways to like get people to sort of dip their toe in the water for actual role play. And I want to preface this with, there's no reason why you have to be in character. That's not a rule.
Yeah.
Play however you're comfortable with. But if you want to try to encourage people to play more in character, what sort of tactics could you use, or what sort of practice could you get them to do?
So I want to start by saying by agreeing with what you said that there's no right way to play D&D. There is, however, different ways to play D&D. People who are very heavy into role play, into actual what's called voice role play, which means you're talking in the voice of your character, is the more typical way that is played that I've seen, as opposed to saying my character says this, or my character tries to do this with their wordy mouth talking. And then there's people who don't want to really have any aspect of that and want to treat this more as a very, very open world sort of war game. And those are all okay. The problem comes when you start mixing them at the table, when you start having multiple different types at the table. Now, what that does is that means that some people who do the in-voice role playing are going to dominate those sides of the conversation, because they're doing the role play. It's easy to engage with them, and the other people don't like to role play, so you let them be alone. But then you end up having an all role play session, and it becomes difficult because during combat everybody gets a turn, but during these role play sessions people can kind of feel left out, especially if they're not really big into role playing. So there's a lot of different ways to resolve that particular issue. But that is kind of how you might identify the issues. If you see people that don't role play a lot, or don't want to role play in voice, they may be quiet during role play parts, or you may notice that as a DM you're just kind of focusing on other people. So that kind of might help you identify it if you haven't already, because they're not always as obvious. The best way to encourage them is to talk to the other players first off. Make sure that they understand that this is not the type of way this guy likes to role play, this person, this woman, whatever. I use guy as a gender neutral term. I apologize. When you're in those moments, make sure you check in with them often, but never put them on the spot. Don't say, well, what does your character do? What does your character say? You could ask them if they want to interject, or if they want to, ask them kind of leading questions. Does your character want to help them talk to these people? Does your character, want to move away and do something else right now? Make sure you give them the opportunity. You never want to throw them in the spotlight. You want to kind of let them know the spotlight is there if they want it. And if they do say, if you invite them into the role play like that, say, does your character have anything to say right now? Does your character have that one's a little tough right there, but does your character want to do anything? Let them have that. If they say, oh yeah, he wants to talk with the guard. Okay, well, what kind of concept do you want to get across? And then usually somewhere along the way there, what's your goal, they'll start to kind of talk, and it will really be in their character voice. I mean, you might have a little tense difference or a little bit of pronoun difference, but there's a good chance that they're kind of talking in their character voice. They don't have to come up with a character voice. That's another thing. Especially people who have watched Critical Role or something like that. They can be intimidated by the level of detail that the voice alone can have in some of these people. You need to remind them that professional D&D players, that's a thing now, they are trained actors
and
now,
improvisers.
and improvisers. The game is real, but this is what they've done for a living, and that's okay that you're not quite like them. You don't have to be. There's no right way to play D&D. There's no wrong way to play D&D. Well, okay, there's a wrong way to play D&D, but that's only if you're. It's mostly out of game exclusive stuff. You're excluding people. But in the confines of that moment, there's nothing wrong they can do. Also, make sure that they understand that nothing they do wrong is going to have serious consequences. And then as a DM, make sure that nothing they do wrong gives them serious consequences until they get more into the game. Once they get more into the game, and I'm talking mostly on the role play side. I'm not saying they may have been playing for years like this. And that may be a barrier that you're dealing with, is trying to get them past this idea that, no, this is how I've always done it. This is how, I've been playing since AD&D. We never role played. We only rolled the dice. Yeah, okay, that's one way to play. That's not how this table plays.
Yeah.
And again, this should be covered in session 0. This should be one of the first things you talk about. If you try to identify these players, try to have played a one-shot with them. That's a great way to do it. But a lot of times, if I want to encourage someone who I know has never really played before, and they don't really know a lot about it, I start without character sheets. I don't know. We'll do a one shot or something, or I might even do something in the moment. I've done this only once with someone, but it worked really well. I had somebody, you're talking about what is role play. I don't really understand it. I don't get any of it. This was before Critical Role or anything. And I took my buddy Brian. He had a concept. I don't know if it was his or not, but the concept of the one room dungeon. You walk into a room. It's a 10 by 10 room. On the far side, sitting at a table, is an orc, and this orc has a meat pie sitting in front of him. He's about to eat, and you are hungry. You want that meat pie. So the dungeon has everything you need to consider it a dungeon. It's got a room. There's a door. There's a monster, and there's treasure. So that's really it. And so they said something like, well, I'm going to go over and talk to the orc, and say, okay, you go over to talk to the orc. What do you say? I say, and they say, give me that meat pie. I'm like, okay. He gets up and punches you in the face. What do you do? Or if I did it in the future now, or what I would probably say is, he turns around and punches you in the face, and you instinctually reach for your weapon. What is it? And then give them that opportunity to build in that moment. You're not asking them what they do in just like, they may not understand they can literally do anything. You could do a backflip over them, jump over the walls, grab the meat pie, and jump out the window. You don't know. They don't know that they can do anything. At best, somebody who's never role played, doesn't understand the concept, may have played a video game and understand that video games have very specific rules. You cannot blow a wall open with an SMG. And if somebody looked at me like that and says, I pull out an SMG and I blow the wall open and I grab the pie and run, I'd be like, that's the greatest thing that's ever happened ever. That is
depending on the tone of your game. If you're trying
this particular tiny role play moment, that's what I'm saying. It's literally them doing anything they want. I don't care what they do. What I want them to do is use their imagination. And the fact is, we get to a certain point. We're talking about this right now. Did you notice that for one split moment they were role playing? They walked up to the orc and they said, "Give me that meat pie." They were role playing for one line. That was it, and it had consequences. But in the end, they were role playing, and that right there. Sometimes the idea of surprising them with it. I don't think I gave this person any warning. They said, "I don't understand the concept." I said, "Okay, so you're blah 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 blah. You're standing at the door. What do you do?" And they looked at me like, "What?" And I was like, "What do you do?" I go over to the guy and I go over to the orc and I say, I talk to him. Okay, well, what would you say? What would you say? It's you. It's not anybody else. Not a character. It's you. You're standing there. What do you do? And they're like, "Oh, I tell him I want the meat pie." Okay, he gets up and punches you in the face. Now what do you do? And I punch it back, I think is what they said. Like, okay, you can do a fist fight with this orc. And I said, at this point in the game, we would roll some dice, and we find out if you win or I win. And let's say, for sake, you win. You've now knocked out this orc by punching him in the face. What do you do next? He goes, I kick him. Okay, great. Now what do you do?
God.
I sit down and eat the meat pie. Great, we're done.
Right in front of him.
Yeah, like going crumbles all over him. But the point is, they
orc
role-played those
tears washes down this pie so well.
Those moments are amazing, and I hope that in the future I have more of those moments. The problem is, I surround myself with gamers all the time now. It's all I'm ever around, so everybody understands the concepts. But
the community's grown so much, and people just feel empowered to participate in a way that they
there's
haven't
so much
before.
content now, and everybody knows somebody who's role played.
Yeah,
I was a little frustrated the other day. There was an article, a quick video. There was a time when we as gamers had to kind of hide. We could not be open with our geekiness because we would get shat on heavily because it was so different. I come to find out a lot of those people were just jealous they couldn't do it. Looking back at certain people going, wow, you really just wanted to play some D&D, didn't you? I'm so sorry that I didn't understand that. But it was high school, and I hate everyone from high school. That's just my hang up. So there, now you can be so open, but there was an article or a video out there with Joe
Manganiello.
Let me say that. And the entire article, and I got in an argument with somebody on Facebook about this. The entire headline was, Joe says that his wife approves of his D&D lifestyle too. Also, and I was like, first off, who's also? Like, who else is? But also, why are we concerned on if his wife? Why wouldn't she approve? Why wouldn't she approve of it? It to me, and somebody argued that's like, well, it's just extra information. I'm like, no, it's the entire headline. It's the only information.
I would argue that particular headline might have more to do with he converted his entire basement into a dungeon, like D&D space. He has,
but the point is, it doesn't tell you that. It was clickbaity at best. But the point is, why wouldn't she approve of whatever he wanted to do? The point is that we have this mentality of putting husband against wife and vice versa. And that's just kind of plays into that. I've seen a lot. It started to make me more notice of it. This idea that people say things like the old ball and chain and things like that. And that type of headline just plays into that. This idea that D&D is just one more roadblock between wife and husband. And it's like, it's not. It's something that brings them together. And
it's almost like you could play with your spouse.
And I know he didn't write the article. I know it was a great video about him talking about this gigantic wine cellar that he turned into a dungeon, which is amazing. But to have made it all about that, I just felt really frustrated that the people who made that video would do that, or that you wouldn't see some complaining from the people that the video was about, saying, guys, this is really not the message we want to be putting across. It got very frustrating. I'm sorry to get preachy. I didn't mean to. As I'm starting to notice these things more and more, becoming more and more part of the community, it's starting to stand out, and it's really starting to frustrate me. But especially the idea of ever putting the husband and wife against each other. It's like, you guys are a team. You guys, if she didn't approve, you probably wouldn't have done it. But also, why? I would have loved to see a 3-minute video of her talking about her first time playing D&D, because she's done it at least once. I would love to, whether she liked it or hated it, whatever. I would just love to hear about her experience playing D&D, because she had to have sat down by now once. She got an entire dungeon for Dungeons and Dragons. She sat down once. I want to see that video.
Yeah, and when you have, there is still despite the fact that you could say that nerd culture has become such a booming economy, such a booming industry, there are still going to be populations that are filtering the perspective on that stuff as being this very other thing, I guess. So it's never going to be like the most mainstream thing ever, but it'll
D&D.
Yeah,
I disagree.
You think it'll be?
I completely disagree. I think D&D in 10 years is going to be as popular as video games are now. Absolutely.
That is a very optimistic and heartening
Maybe 15
opinion.
Years. I think video games are going to be 1,000 times more popular. I think video games, streaming content, and things like Dungeons and Dragons, because of the streaming content, things are going to take over the industry. I think we're going to see the collapse of cable, or it's going to have to change dramatically, including getting interfaces that actually work. But I think that D&D is only on the upcharge. I would say that we're going to see 5 to 10 years solid growth for D&D, unless WotC screws it up. And then that means gaming in other ways. Maybe other systems start to see a resurgence, but I don't see the current. And I'm not saying it's going to be straight 10 years of growth. There's probably be some slumps, but especially 2020 November-ish. But specifically with this group, the people who are running the WotC right now, I don't see them making those mistakes. They're making all the right decisions. They're doing a very good job. They're not flooding the market with content. We're not going to see a 6th edition anytime soon. I think they're in it for the long haul. They've got the backing of basically Twitch and Amazon now, with D&D Beyond being involved heavily. And it's I don't see it going anywhere. And I would also be very surprised if Amazon doesn't end up owning WotC sometime in the next 10 to 15 years, if not owning Hasbro. But
you heard it here first, folks.
I don't know. I've never made predictions before. This is my first time ever.
That's where you should put your money on the stock market.
Yeah, do it. On the stock, in the
D&D
stock market. DAND. Dandy.
Yeah, I know that guy.
I have no ideas. That could be a bunch of bullshit. This is just where my head's at. I've never made predictions before in my life like that.
You feel strongly.
This is just where I feel very strongly that D&D is this is only the beginning for D&D. If it wasn't, we wouldn't have opened Nerdsmith. If I didn't believe that wholeheartedly, that we are still in the cusp, in the growth stage of that, I wouldn't do this. If I thought next year D&D was going to start collapsing all around us, there's no way I would have done this. And it's not just because I love it and I believe in it. It's because I've been doing this for 20 years. I've been involved with the industry. I've been watching it. It is in the best position it's ever been in, ever. The game industry is stronger than it has ever been, and I owned a game store right towards the end of one of the strongest booms that had seen since the early '90s, mid '90s, with Magic Revised Edition coming out, and when prices skyrocketed, the first skyrocket of Magic, and right now Magic is dying, unfortunately. So we're going to see a big uptick in a lot of other areas, including Dungeons and Dragons. Anyway. Not meant to go on to that kind of thing at all. That's not what we're here for. I'm so sorry. There was a lot of there that it was not meant to be. That's what the show is about, though. We go and talk about all sorts of things. So I'm sorry about that. Thank you all for still being here, the several of you that are here.
You mean people maybe want to hear your opinion on the thing?
Maybe. If you want to hear my opinion, great. I mean, you're going to hear it here. That's kind of the point of the show. It's our opinion. It's our facts. It's...
You know what I just noticed? We don't have any music. We've been talking for a straight 40 minutes with no fun party music.
That's why no one's here.
We don't have the music going.
Do that.
And as we begin music, let us discuss our next topic. So I found this article a while ago on highlevelgames.ca, which is a blog, and the article is called 5 Things Players Should Consider Before a Skill Check. And I think we talked about some of this a little bit on an earlier subject or an earlier episode, but these are a basic run through of how to pack your request for a skill check, or how to pack a skill check with more information to accomplish what you actually want to accomplish. So they talk about the idea that, so let's just go through the list of the things that they want you to consider before you roll a skill check. So your actual goal, that it sounds a little trivial sometimes to do that, to say, well, tell them what your goal is, tell the DM what your goal is. But just saying, I want to do X, does not necessarily lead the DM to understand what you're actually trying to accomplish. It is more, you might end up coming into a situation, and this has happened to me before, you say you want to do X, DM hears that, but doesn't understand that what you're actually saying is, let's find an example. I want to climb, the example they have here is, I want to climb a wall. So you tell the DM you want to climb the wall, but without a clear goal, your DM might end up narrating something that is counter to what you actually wanted to achieve. So the example that they're giving is like, I climbed up into these trees, but I didn't get any cover during combat. Why? And the DM says, well, you just told me you wanted to climb trees. You didn't tell me why you wanted to climb trees, that you wanted to be trying to seek cover. I just thought you were higher up. Like, you didn't tell me you were trying to hide. So you need to make sure that when you're giving your DM a goal, or when you're giving DM a skill that you want to test, you tell them what you're actually intending to do. Don't just describe the action. Let them know what you're trying to achieve. And I hope that comes from a place of not player versus DM. Sometimes it might be like, I'm gonna give the DM the most bare bones information, because if I give them too much information, they're gonna use it against me.
Right.
And ideally a DM won't do that. They're not gonna say, oh, well, you told me what your intention is, and now my monster is what your intention is, and they're gonna exactly encounter to that intention. Ideally, that doesn't happen.
No, I agree with that completely.
The next,
I often
Yeah, go ahead.
ask what a person's goal is when I'm not clear. If I don't think I understand what their intention is, I'll ask the player what their goal with their action is, especially if they don't really seem to understand how to phrase something. I'm like, so what are you trying to do here? Oh, I just want to run and I want to jump on top of the beholder. Okay, great. Well, that's fine. Let's talk about this and this. You can do it like this. Give me an athletics check. And then we just like, okay, you run up this little spire that's sitting right next to it, and you leap over on top of the beholder. Now you're up there. Congratulations. Whack away. Lop off all the little dingly bits you like. Miss Bobbit. All right. Deep cut.
So you talk to your DM about what your actual goal is when you try to achieve a skill check.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing to think about is the means to do it. How are you actually going to try to achieve it? By just saying, I want to climb a wall, DM might just pick the most basic option and do that. But you have equipment in your inventory that would give you a bonus or something, and you need to tell them, I want to use this that I have in order to achieve my goal. So I have a grappling hook. I want to climb the wall with this grappling hook that I have. Giving your DM context and enough information that they can apply any modifiers that might need to happen, or just reward you for creative role play using your environment or your inventory in order to achieve something, rather than just say, I climbed the wall. You can use that as an opportunity to use the environment to your advantage, or finally get to use that weird random item that you haven't been able to use in your inventory.
Right.
Boy, howdy, let me tell you, at some point I really want to use my decanter of endless water, but I have to remember I have it, and you have to find the right opportunity for it.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Which is funny because...
I don't drink or eat, so yeah.
Well,
Decanter's real
so
challenging.
they changed decanter of endless water a little bit. The idea in old systems, you could turn it on and then leave it somewhere. You could just leave it geysering water out,
just flood a
and
room,
flood someone's house or a room, or it could be the source of fountains at a temple or something. And now it's you have to activate it every round to keep it going. Which because it was abused. Go figure. It's basically a portable fire hose
that never runs out.
That never runs out. So go figure. It was extremely abused.
You know why they changed it? Because the elemental plane of water was just getting pissed off.
Yeah, it was running out of water. So
we went down a whole inch. What the fuck were you using it for?
Who left the tap on?
Oh no, it's like that. It's like that sad commercial, that PSA commercial about wasting water with the goldfish in the bowl.
Oh,
You ever see that? Where the kid like leaves the sink on and like the fishbowl starts
yeah, it's going down.
so sad. Anyway, sorry. All right, so the third thing so you've told your DM the goal, you've told your DM how you're going to do it, and the third thing to consider is what skill do you actually want to use, because it's not every DM is going to know exactly what you have, especially in a bigger group. It's really unreasonable to assume that your DM is going to have all of your character sheets memorized. They might not realize you have a skill that you want to use for something. So
you might not even realize you have skills.
Yeah. Oh my God, you have proficiencies in something? Could have fooled me.
Always shocks me. I don't.
I can do a thing effectively.
What's this E next to your thing here? What? +9.
11, baby. Yeah. So the idea being that there might be, whether it's a physical challenge or a, persuasive speaking challenge that you're trying to overcome, you might want to be more specific with what skill, because obviously you want to use the skills that you're good at. So, let your DM know that if there's something specific, this is the one that says some DMs might not like this style. Some DMs might prefer to say, tell me what you want to do and how you want to do it, and I will give you the skill. Don't offer the skill. This is the one that I wanted your opinion on. What you think about that?
If the players, I very often allow my players to use a skill, even if it's not something I think of, as long as they can justify it. It's not a challenge. I'm trying to get them to look for weird, obscure things. But often there's a lot of very strange ways you can go about doing things. And there's a lot of kind of mixture between certain things. Like perception and investigation is always a tough one. It's always really difficult to know when to use perception and when to use investigation. And I understand the basic differences, but situations like, okay, if you're looking for, footprints at a crime scene, is that perception or investigation? Because it's dealing with clues. So, but a lot of people would say that it's perception to find them, investigation to interpret them. But then you're taking what should be one roll or less and turning it into 2 rolls. And if you get several, after several, people trying to do the same thing, it can get tedious. But if somebody came to me and said, here's my goal, here's how I want to go about doing it, and because of how I want to go about doing it, I want to use this skill with this stat, I would be like, okay, all of that makes sense. That I'm 100% with you. I almost always would allow them to go ahead and do it.
Yeah, a lot of what this article is saying to me is arm yourself with information so your DM doesn't have to make all the decisions, or so that the DM can make very informed judgments. Let's see. The fourth thing is assistance. So look to other characters, look to NPCs to see if there's anything in your vicinity or in your social circle that you can use to help you achieve something.
Good idea. Tools. A lot of people forget that there are tools that you can use, but tools just give you proficiency. So if you already have proficiency, there's no real reason to use them. Although some DMs, like me, may often give a little extra bonus, or at least take that into consideration, the idea that you are both proficient in athletics while you're trying to break down that door and using a crowbar or something like that. You're trying to climb, this the side of this mountain, but you're also using a climber kit, but you also have a proficiency in athletics. You have proficiency in athletics plus 11, plus you're using a climbing kit. It's very unlikely that you're going to succeed in climbing that mountain. That's just the way it is. No matter how difficult that mountain is,
succeed.
It would need to be made out of ice, that is covered in slime, that is covered in lube. And all of that together might result in them having a difficult time. But seriously, plus 11, average roll of 10, that's a 21. You're using a mountain climbing kit too.
I don't want lube on a mountain. That's unpleasant. You just see a poor little mountain goat sliding down the mountainside. I can't grip. Ah.
I guess it would be more with all that just gone. So this brings up one of my bigger issues is the bandwagon. This has been and I don't know if this should be its own segment or not, but this kind of came along because you talk about getting assistance. Ask for assistance. Sure,
PC assistance. Okay, PC I'll add that to our list.
Turn and ask for the PC assistance, because my difficulty, my struggle is when one person wants to do something and then all of a sudden 6 people want to do the same thing, or especially after that person fails. To me, it doesn't feel genuine if your character, if one character comes up with this idea of doing something, this idea that a bunch of other people will do it too. It seems weird. But if you're as a group trying to research an area or look over an area for something, you're going to go do your own things. It doesn't make sense that you're going to go over the same area 6 different times. You might go over it twice, hence having assistance and getting advantage. But it just doesn't seem to make sense to me that you're going to be like, okay, every single person is going to look over this square foot of the wall in particular. It seems ridiculous. Now, there's a lot of different ways to handle that, and we can talk about those in the future, but I mean, that's one of the areas I struggle in. And I think I'd like to look up a few more options.
One of the things that I think would
passive stats resolve a lot of that nowadays. But
yeah, one of the things that I think would be interesting is if you think about the idea of skills as also being predilections. You don't necessarily want to say just because your character doesn't have points in this doesn't mean they can't do it. But in situations where everybody's in the group, it might make sense to maybe encourage people to think about the fact that, oh, well, your character has proficiency and expertise in investigation. That's a thing you really dig doing. Like, that is not just something you're good at. It is something you gravitate towards. Somebody with a negative modifier in investigation or a 2 versus like an 11, that's not necessarily someone who can't do it, but in the grips of a moment, like really quick, they might not even think to do it. So maybe trying to figure out how to encourage people to more frequently than not lean into their stat as an indicator of personality.
Right.
That might help a little bit. You don't want to say never do it ever, but just like when everybody's doing this.
Right. Which I apologize. You may have already said I've done occasionally. I was busy naming the mountain, but I don't think occasionally. I will say, oh, well, anybody who's trained in the skill can go ahead and do this thing. And maybe I don't explain well enough my concept behind that, but that's exactly it. This idea that in this moment, someone who's trained, somebody who has proficiency in this stat, is the type of person that's going to think about doing that, or the type of person that's capable of doing that. So I say, if you're trained in this, go ahead and do whatever you're going to do right now. But if you're not, then just sit there. It's okay. You'll get the next one,
Yeah. The other thing that we've done before.
Matterhorny Mountain, by the way.
Matterhorny. And then my brain is gone. No, it's okay. The other thing on the concept of assistance that you've done before, it plays a little bit into the bond system that we've done before, encouraging players to utilize. Which was completely stolen from the Adventure Zone. Well, yeah. And which also Griffin might have taken from something else. But I don't know. I need to look that up. But the point is that there is a way to encourage your players to not just think about their inventory as their capital, but thinking about their social capital as well as a means of getting stuff done. You have a lot of people that are just like, well, I don't fucking know what I'm supposed to be doing right now. It's like, a wizard, right? You could talk to them and ask them. And I think part of part of a DM's job, at least in my opinion, is to, if they come up with something like that, we want to go speak to a person. That shouldn't be a dead end necessarily. I think you need to reward them for thinking about their social network within the, maybe not as a crutch, but if they think of it, have something come out of it, even just a direction.
I agree 100%. From a DM perspective, though, that's not always easy.
Sure, absolutely.
When an NPC is approached and they have zero to do in the background, I am good at doing improv. I'm good at coming up with ideas on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
If you run into a dead end like that, that means you are so cold that Logan could not make a single connection between the two, and I can make connections anywhere except here. It's maybe 1% of interactions, but I get stuck in those moments, and I can't imagine what a less experienced DM might get stuck on. It is difficult.
You have talked about the idea previously, though, of running a story with basic connect the dots. You don't have the NPCs, but you have the information that they need to be able to collect, and then you just insert an NPC when you need it. This feels like a good opportunity to utilize that skill or prep time. Like, if you're going to prep, this is how they solve this. This is where, if you didn't necessarily have it planned, but they say, we want to go seek out this NPC, this ally of ours, to entreat them to help us, grab one of those little pieces of information, and that's where you put it.
So here's the problem with that system, though. Mm-hmm. That information is still predicated on the idea that the person needs to have a reason for knowing that information.
Sure, so if you're looking find a good, reasonable way for how to do it.
But that's my point. So that's what I'm saying. If you're so cold, so like I have one that my example is always the Romany woman, more very poorly called a gypsy woman or a nomadic fortune teller. The idea that they're going to be sitting there telling a fortune, and somehow you've got to get the players to that person, and they don't want to go anywhere near this nomad camp. So what you do is you can go, I can stick this woman, or better yet, I can take this information and put it with any mysterious stranger. But if they end up going to their most familiar friend, it's much more difficult to get that information through them. You can fudge it and say, well, I had this person I talked to, and they gave me this prophetic dream, and here I'm giving it to you because she told me to. It gets a little weird and convoluted when you start getting into second, third, and fourth party.
What are you talking about, Logan? My Aunt Sally came for a visit. She happens to be a seer. She's upstairs. No, you can't talk to her.
But yeah, that's my point. Exactly. And then, another NPC. What's her name?
That's classified.
Aunt Sally. I just said it. Her first name is Aunt. Her last name is Sally. She's Aunt Sally.
She's a bug lady.
She's a bug lady.
Her name is Aunt Sally.
The bug lady. But that I agree with you completely. But my point is, you're still going to run into those dead ends. You're still going to hit occasionally those dead ends. But in your example, you said that they're going to their magic user. Maybe they're dealing with something magical. I try to give you something, or at least, like, you know what? I don't have any experience with that, but this NPC does. And then you get to watch your players do nothing with that information and go off in a complete tangent and start a new plot line. So that happens too. The other thing I do in my games, which I don't recommend for inexperienced DMs, is I start another plot line. They go to a different person looking for different information. I'll just have something there and let them start a new plot line and be like, okay, sometimes that information turns into something that I can route back into this plot line, and I change it. It's like, okay, well, that was something new, but it fits too well. And that's what I do is I have a bag full of puzzle pieces over here, and they're from like 30 different puzzles.
But they're all made from the same mold. So
right.
You can be
all
like,
the same die cut. I just throw them on the table, and occasionally these pieces fit. And then about half the time, they even look like the right color. So they just happen to work really well in that particular spot. And boy, that was loud. All right. Thank you for the follow, though. I forgot that I turned off the audio for everyone else, so only I hear it.
Yeah,
but it's twice as loud.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's twice as loud in my ears. I'm going to fix that. No, I'm not, because tonight we've got the Nightmare Night 2, so we won't have
well, I'm not dealing with that yet. Woo.
Yeah. But yeah, so for me, I throw those puzzle pieces out all the time. There are times when I put things in the game when I'm like going, I have no idea what this means. One of my most famous examples in my mind, or my favorite examples, I should say, not famous, was when the character Jastra looked at Mari, Chelsea's character, and said, made some sort of familiar comment like, I know you, or I know about you, or something like that. At that moment, it was just me bullshitting through lines. I had no idea. The next day, I realized that since Mari is this special race, but it's kind of hidden. And then I realized Jastra could be that as well. And then all of a sudden, when I realized because of something else that Jastra could be this, all of a sudden that comment she made snapped into place. And I went, that's why she made that comment. Even though I didn't know idea at the moment why she was making that comment. It was just something I kind of said randomly. I throw out a lot of things. And if my players ever went back and actually watched the stream, they could catch a lot of crap, I'm sure, that never gets brought up again. And I'm worried that we're going to eventually have like audience members that do that. They'll be like, well, you said this and this and this and this, and none of that's come back up. Yep. Mm-hmm. But I guide this along with the story. We tell a certain story. There's always going to be kind of loose ends and threads left behind. If you're the type of person with an eidetic memory and you grab onto all those little pieces, sorry, the way that I storytell, and that's the way it is. I realized there's probably 3 major things where I thought things were going one way, and I abandoned 10% of it. There's just sitting out there still, and we're never going to touch it again. We're never going to go back to it unless it makes sense. And then all of a sudden I can go, oh, look back, episode 7, guys, you should have been paying attention. I had no idea, but I love to make them think that way, even though I tell them this. And that's the funny thing. I tell them I do this. They watch this. Well, some of them watch the show. They know that I do this, and yet I still say things like that. They're like, Logan, you're a genius. I'm like, okay, I'm a genius because I can put pieces together. I'm not a genius because I actually plan all this the whole way. That's my storytelling style, and it works for some people. It does not work for everyone, but that's my storytelling style. I put pieces out there, and then I connect them. I connect the dots later. A lot of people want to put up, if you want to make a murder board for the game, this crazy board with all these strings attached. A lot of times you would just, you would start like, okay, here's the victim and here's the thing, there's the motive, but how can we convolute it? Okay, we'll draw strings over here. No, I just go, let's just put up a bunch of pictures and posters and things like that. And then I'll just kind of figure it out as we go. And then after every session, I'll put up one yarn string, and like, oh, there we go. So that kind of connected. Okay, and this connects over here. Now I know my goal is I have to connect this and that.
It's more like you're playing darts, and then you take some silly string, and that's how you connect the darts. Sometimes it's coherent.
I would actually love a loose ends blog. I would love someone to be like, here's everything that's floating out there, because then I could remember and I could start grabbing them and I could take my 10% down to 1%, because I can easily figure out how to wrap them back in and look like a genius to my players again.
Okay, we have one more of the 5 things from this article. This was
so sorry. I took us on a complete tangent.
I am 100% okay going on tangents. So the 5th thing, so what have you done? You've told your DM what you want to do and like what your end goal is with what you want to do. You've told the DM why or how you're going to do it. You've considered what skill you want to use to do it. And you've thought about, do you have any outside assistance that could help you achieve that thing? The 5th thing is using the skill test as an opportunity to show your character's personality. So the way that they can say a lot about your character and can share a lot and be a really good opportunity for character building and role play. The article has an absolutely fabulous example.
Then please share.
So the idea that I attack with my sword is not nearly as entertaining as I jump backwards as I flail my sword while yelling, I hate skeletons!
We had a first-time player in a game. My God, I can't remember their name, and I feel so bad. They played a cleric called Bipian. Bipian was afraid of salamanders. hated salamanders. Their entire quest was the destruction of salamanders. Bipian would not engage in combat. Bipian was a pacifist. Bipian was scared and would constantly hide around the corner, jump out, heal, and then jump back. That was Bipian's entire shtick, and it made that character lovable, and we had concern. Bipian still gets mentioned occasionally in Countless Heroes. If you catch occasionally, that was two games prior to Countless Heroes. Almost 2 years ago at this point, but Bipian still gets mentioned. I can't remember any of the characters in that game. Tessa played a actually adorable, very old dwarf woman who had decided to finally go adventuring after years of being a housewife. I think no, she was she took care of orphan children. She took care of orphan children.
That the one with the giant wooden spoon.
Yes, she has a giant wooden spoon as a weapon. She was, I can't remember her name, but Tessa will tell me, but that was amazing. But anyway, yes, absolutely. The personality coming out, I love that a lot. Just make sure that your personality, it doesn't become obnoxious or negative and start affecting the other players. That could, I've seen
right.
that.
This is about the flavor and the intent of your character, not like fucking with other people's fun. Yeah. Don't yuck people's yums, guys.
Don't yuck people's yums. Why would you do that?
But the idea that, you want to climb a wall, which is the ongoing example in this article, you want to climb a wall, but your character's afraid of heights. You can use that to your advantage in describing what's going on and how you go about approaching
Talk about how
something.
very careful you are at every step and how it takes you so long and slow. And yeah, the DM might even call like, oh, you're scared, so that might slow you down a little bit. Roll with that. A good DM will not allow it to affect you so much that you're going to miss out on something later on. That's something I want to really get across, and I talk to my players all the time about. You're not failing in those moments. It's role play. It's flavor. It makes sense. If something makes sense, let it happen. In the middle of combat, you may accidentally cast a spell that's going to hurt your allies. It happens. It's okay. That's part of the drawback of being an all-powerful wizard or sorcerer or warlock or whatever. You have these abilities that are wild and unpredictable and can explode in your face or your ally's face. It happens. So if you drop it down, you point in the spot and the fireball's going to hit your allies, stick with it. Say, well, that's what I chose, so I'm going with that. It's okay, because a good DM is not going to allow that to TPK the party, not going to allow that to do anything like that. They are going to be understanding of those moments. Now, does that mean that if your DM is one of those type of people that says the dice lay where the dice lay, maybe you could argue it a little bit. But for DMs who understand the story is more important than the dice rolling correctly or the way the dice come out. The point is, a story moment is a story moment. People should die for important reasons, not because somebody put a spell in the wrong place. It just shouldn't happen for that. Now, granted, the overall combat may be much more difficult, and that's okay. And that may end up being with one person dying, but it probably won't be a TPK. That's the point. Yes, there are consequences. Yes, one person may die, but I don't see it being a TPK ever. In one of my sessions, just because somebody put a spell in the wrong place or somebody failed a save, or even if you're on a time limit trying to get somewhere, if the DM says something like, well, you're going to take a little extra time because you're slowly climbing this mountain because you're afraid of heights, it's probably, or it should be, from the DM perspective, just flavor. Even if you make it just in the nick of time, you probably were going to make it just in the nick of time anyway, because
heroism.
That's the story we tell. Yeah. We don't tell the story of the people who showed up an hour early and rescued the princess before she was even taken into captivity, just happened to be there. We don't tell that story. We tell the story of the people that make it just. We definitely don't tell the story of the people that don't make it and the princess is sacrificed either.
Well, now I'm writing
people who make it just in time.
Now I'm writing a note to make an adventure where you show up super early.
Super, like, what do we do? What are we supposed to be here? Oh my god, the portent, that's for next week. What do we do till then? That'd be amazing. I love that, actually. Like your portents are always off, but like at least a day or a week later, so you never know how early you need to be there.
One of my favorite Steven Universe characters is an off version.
Yes, please post the link second.
Yes.
Can we give VIP privilege to post links? I don't know if we can do that.
Oh.
I'll look into that and see.
You
if we
can
do
also send me a
people
DM
legally.
on Discord.
If you just
Samurai.
post it, I'll just be able to click a button and
Yeah.
make it happen. Oh, maybe not. I thought I could. Oh, never mind. I thought I could. I thought I could just go. Yeah, send the
You
link
can
to Tessa.
Yeah. My favorite Steve character is one of my favorites is I think it's Paparacha. She's a sapphire that's off color, and the sapphires can all see into the future, but she sees directly into the past. So she's always like 10 seconds, 15 seconds later, after something happens, she announces it's going to happen. But I did notice that she can see what has happened, but that she sees the intent behind it. So instead of like, this person's going to miss us with their laser beam, it's this person's going to purposefully miss us with their laser beam because they feel bad, which is way more valuable. But just remind me of that.
Very nice.
All right, so then, at the final part of this article, the example is, so with all of those things in mind, your goal, the means to do it, the skill you want to use, the assistance you can get, and flavor for how your character's personality would affect how they approach it, you could change, I want to climb the castle wall, to, I want to get to the top of the castle wall so I can sneak in. I'm going to look for the best catapult expert in our unit, and I want to convince him to launch me. I want to use my charm skill, and with a wink and a convincing smile, I say, if you get me on top of that wall, I will end the war, and you can be on your way home before dawn. And then you make your character roll
Nice.
a charm check in that example. So I think that those 5 things are very important. I think they give players a lot of context that they can provide to their DM, and obviously you don't necessarily have to do all 5 of those things at once, but giving some consideration to the reasoning for why you want to do stuff can open up a lot of character building opportunities, can give your DM a lot of fodder to work with when trying to make a scene interesting or make a skill check more interesting and entertaining. So I think that these are all very interesting subjects to think about, or trying to add a little bit of zest to what could be a very plain skill check. Making those moments just as entertaining as the combat, successes. Just trying to make the entire experience as entertaining as possible. And I think those are some fun ways to do that. So this article, again, I'll put the link in here. It's from highlevelgames.ca. The author was Rodrigo Peralta. If I can social media link for him, I will do so. But I will put a link to the article in the chat and in the description for the video.
Perfect. I think that's great. You're kind of dying over there, but
Alrighty. So let's see. The next thing is, let me make sure we don't have a sponsor break right now. No, one more thing, and then we'll talk. So the next thing is called the easy way. This was a subject that we brought up last episode, but didn't get to speak too much at length about. As we've mentioned before, as a DM, if you're a DM, your enjoyment, your comfort, your success is also a factor, if not just as important as the player's enjoyment and success and comfort.
Yes, absolutely, but not more important.
Not more important, but should be given weight. You're a person too, and you're also playing a game with people. So what sometimes that results in, and as the DM, you have the authority and the right to also express that there are things that you don't want to deal with in your game. We've talked about lines and veils before, and how players can set, ground rules for what they're comfortable with, and whether this is content, mechanics, theme, things like that. You're telling the story with them. You should also get a say in what is or is not included. And you might have some bad experiences that result in you absolutely not wanting to deal with something in your game. So you decide to completely ban it from any games that you run. And so we're going to talk a little bit about why you might want to ban something, how you might go about banning it, and maybe some alternative options instead of outright banning it. But in my opinion, you're still within your rights to ban something. DM's word is law to some degree for me. So if someone doesn't want to do it, you can play a million other games if you want, or it just doesn't have to be in this game that this thing happens. You can try to find another game. As
specifically, though, what it came down to was my concern, and I had one person talk to me a little bit about it afterwards. Telling me why I was wrong, and that's okay. For me, my experiences with running a game store and all the years of DMing I've done, and the millions of gamers, probably not millions, I've met and talked to about D&D. Definitely not millions. The number one reason, if you dig down into it, and that's something that I pride myself on being able to, is I can sit there and kind of dig down to somebody's true objection to something if I want to. When you sit there and talk to somebody about why they ban something, the reason in the end why they ban it is because they don't want to deal with it in their game, or they can't deal with it. Feels almost malicious, like it's just like, flying broke the game and blah 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 blah. Flying PCs breaks the game, or it is desperation, like I have no idea how to handle Ghostwise halflings being able to use telepathy to talk to the players. It breaks everything I'm doing. What do I do? And so in those moments, I'm a little more sympathetic to those that are desperate and don't know what to do. But overall, that's where my original concern stemmed from all of this. And there are ways around all of it, and there's tools that you can use to kind of get around it. But unfortunately, in the end, it's never going to be necessarily in that moment fun for the DM. And if that is something that isn't fun for you, then yeah, go ahead. Talk to your players in session 0. Tell them why you want to ban it. Be honest. Say, I have a real hard time dealing with this sort of thing in the game. It always feels like it becomes broken. It always feels like it's only used by power gamers to do X, Y, or Z. Sentinel, and what's it called? Sentinel and
Great Weapon Master, or Polearm Master.
Polearm Master and Sentinel feat.
I love
those two feats together. Well, because you played it well. You didn't use it. It wasn't an every combat, we're just going to lock down the bad guy sort of thing. There were 1 or 2 combats that felt like that, but there are people that ban that combination because people use it, and there'll be 1 or 2 people that have it, and they can, put a wall in front of the casters, and literally that's it. You have to create specialized combats to be able to defeat them.
And that can be really exhausting, to have to be so DIY with how you make stuff, that you always have to make those considerations. And that does become a player versus DM situation, and that can be frustrating if that's not how you want to play.
But in those moments, the DM is the one that I feel is making that happen. Unless the players are trying to be broken type characters, these rules as they exist in the world, if that world existed and you didn't ban it, people would do that. People would take these specialized skills and create the best possible party to be able to fight these horrible, scary monsters. They're literally fighting life and death in those moments. They're going to take every advantage they can. The other side of it is, in my opinion, let them succeed in those moments. Let them have that. As I said last week, it will always be more satisfying when you finally do get that one over on them, and you figure out that one weakness of theirs, or you find that one combat that works really well. Also, try different things. Stop with the sword and board enemies. Stop with the single wizard enemies. Create a group of enemies, because I guarantee you, a group of enemies is a lot harder. Throw one, let's say the players are level 10. You get 6 level 10s. If you get 4 level 10s, which is the standard party, 4 to 5, you are throwing a 17th level caster against them as a standard. I think actually no, a 12, it's CR12. So it's a hard combat. You add 1 or 2 more players into that, and you could throw 20 zombies on top of that, or 10 zombies on top of that, Now all of a sudden they've got melee fighters and this 17th level wizard floating around with time stop and a bunch of other things. By the way, that's one of the standard creatures in the monster manual is a humanoid abjurer, and it literally has time stop against CR10 if it's a boss fight. PCs. Okay.
Can I apologize to you, Logan,
that's-
for having a
yeah.
bugbear with a 15-foot reach in the Sentinel Polar Master
ridiculous.
combo?
That was a lot of fun.
I mean, at that point, you also made it, and you've done this with barbarians and stuff, like melee characters that I've played. You just make them fuck all far away on the table or on the map, and I'm like, I can't do anything. I have to get there first.
Right. That's okay. And in those straight melee fights, that works really well. But what it does, it makes you the target, you know. But there were times when you could completely lock somebody out. There was nothing I could do. Literally nothing. I would have to disengage to run up to you. And even then, I think it still didn't quite work for some reason. But that's what I would have to do is disengage just to get to you. But that's what they did. The people learn, people adapt, and they're going to overcome. Now, the stupid monsters didn't. They just turned and tried to hit whoever they could. And if you had players that would have paid attention to every moment and really maybe even metagamed a little bit to make it happen, they would have stayed right behind you the whole time, and you guys would have dominated even more combats. The point is they didn't. The point is you still had those opportunities. You still had to run around a little bit because we didn't metagame, because people weren't trying to break the game. That's the difference. If your players are trying to break the game, it's time to have a discussion. If they're not trying to break the game, let them win and just work on different combats. One of the big things I did is I switched from using the monster manual into using Kobold Press. That has made a huge deal on two fronts.
Yeah.
One, and I still use monsters from the monster manual all the time, but it's done two things. One, they don't know the monsters at all. There is no metagaming, and I don't even use the monsters directly as they are. I tweak them, but that's a skill you'll learn. Two, Kobold Press, I think, has a better understanding of the balance between PC level and monsters. And something I always forget a little bit is that you guys are technically a party of 6, which is 1 to 2 more people than the game is balanced for. So you got to up those encounters a little bit. And I always do, just usually by adding a few extra hit points. You know, the PCs will sit there and go, we've done 200 hit points. What is going on? It's like, yeah, you have done 200 hit points, but this creature normally has 180 or 160 or 140, but you guys also have 2 extra players. So this has a third more hit points. So I just added 80 hit points. You're close, but you know, whatever. Now, is that exactly balanced? No, but also I can look at the combat and I can judge it and decide what's going on here. Last night, you guys had a heck of a hard fight. There was a monster that could have done fatigue. You guys made every save though, but a DC 17 con check or gain fatigue every time it hits you, hits 2 round. The first one, if both attacks hit you, it then does a 3d10 more damage on top of that in the form of negative energy. It was an insane combat. Most of the party didn't take any damage. They had one or two people that were sitting there taking all the damage, and then they would heal them up. And they would take all the damage, they would heal them up. And then there was one time that I was like, oh, they cast a spell. They used Dispel Magic, so we used its turn then. And the next turn, they wasted their turn because they did a bait spell, because they got 2 a turn, and they used a cantrip to try to bait them into dispel or counterspelling the cantrip, but they didn't have any more counterspells. So then they had to take their other action to actually cast the spell they wanted to cast. They lost 2 rounds there worth of combat because the party was just good. And that was a tweaked Kobold Press monster. So it was already a little beefier.
I'm always tremendously impressed with the Kobold Press stuff. It's just tweaked enough. It's just different enough that they still fit really well into the world, into the fantasy world that we're working with, but there's just these really fun flavors to them that I really, really enjoy from both the storytelling and a player perspective. I really, really like them. Yeah. Sometimes they suck.
We are looking for
another in that good way.
Kobold. I mean,
yes, always.
Poke them. But yeah, no, they are. I use a lot of our products, and I used to be somebody that did not use any third-party products because I grew up with D&D 3.0 and Splat book hell. There was 1,000 new books coming out I'm there was probably 1,000 3.0, 3.5 additional third-party books that were out there, not including online supplements. That's not an exaggeration. I'm sure there was at least 1,000. There was just so much constant content, and it was so broken that I was like, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. Literally, because of the open game license and how open it was, anybody could create as much content as they wanted in any way they wanted, to the point where when they moved on to 4th edition, it spawned an entire new game system out of the OGL Pathfinder, because people didn't want to switch. They wanted the complexity. They wanted the difficult. They wanted all the splat books. So we switched over. We tried going to 4th edition, and then when 5th edition came out, we got back into D&D finally. But we were playing 3.5 Pathfinder for a long time, and I'm so glad that 5th edition came out. It's a much better system. I like Pathfinder. Pathfinder's a good system, but 5e is if you're not into power gaming and you don't want to spend hours working on your character every level just to tweak all the abilities, and you don't like reading through splat books, which I don't. The best I do when I was playing Pathfinder, the best thing I would do is if it's a game where I know that I need to be a little power hungry because the DM is very difficult, creates very difficult encounters, I would just use optimization guides and go and look and be like, okay, what's best? All right, that I can work that. I'll make the character around that. Otherwise, I would just use the basic book and maybe one other book, because I was like, I'm not going to read through 50 books. I'm just not going to. I might go through occasionally and look at the flavor of things, and that was fun. But with 5e, it's the content, everything matters. And then when you start adding these other books and a lot of the modules and stuff, everything coming out has a focus on balance. Anything that's got any kind of attention has a focus on balance, and they're extremely good. Everything has been good. There's certain places I would avoid, certain what I would call a dandy wiki is a place I would avoid, if anybody understands what I'm saying there. And that place is crazy with their content, but it's got some random charts that are really good. But yeah, I don't think you'll see those on this show because I don't want to promote that website. But there's a lot of great stuff out there. I'm just really, really impressed. And then, of course, D&D took it to a whole new level with the DMs Guild, which, while I do have some concerns about their licensing agreement and who they're working with, the company that actually created the website for them, I am very impressed with the content that's come out of it and the people
that
have come out of it.
Okay, so we've talked a little bit about why you might ban things at the table. We've talked a little bit about what else do we want to say about the idea of not allowing it? You seem sort of where do you fall personally? Do you ban stuff?
I used to ban stuff all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I even tried to start playing in worlds such as Kingdoms of Calamar, where they ban stuff by the general rule of the game. And if you want to play in a setting such as Kingdoms of Calamar that has low magic and does not have powerful magic at all, I think +2 swords in a system that went up to +5 were the highest that ever existed in that world. That's fine. That is a setting. And that means if your setting doesn't have a particular race or type of item or something, okay. But just make sure you're doing it for the right reason, in my opinion. Just make sure that you're not sitting there going, I don't want Aarakocra in my game because I don't want a PC thinking they can play Aarakocra. And my opinion has always been, for the most part, except for a brief stint, in my most recent history, I've tried to have the opinion that if it exists in D&D, it has a place in my world. Does that mean it has a place in the player's hands? Maybe not. Does that mean it has a place in the immediate vicinity that people are going to see? Maybe not. It may be some small, remote little island off the coast of Lamina or someplace that has this particular whatever on it. But for the most part, if it's in the core books, especially if it's in the PC books, the books where the PCs, things are balanced for the PCs to be able to play, I let them play it. I don't ban anything in those realms anymore. And at this point, I don't think I've said no to nearly anything that anybody's come to me with, except for adding a new race. Races are difficult. We added 5. We're only going to add 3, but we fell in love with all of them. We added 5 to our world. And a couple
we've also limited them in terms of our setting as being incredibly rare. The entire party's not going to be Nicosta, for example.
Exactly, especially with a party of 16.
It's all the Nicosta in the continent.
But you've run into what, 3 Nicosta now total?
Yeah.
4
in a very highly populated area that has a port, and my thoughts on the idea of banning stuff is, like with almost everything, communication being key. If you genuinely have a reason to not want to have something, even if it is, I'm a new DM, I'm not comfortable with this, I don't know how to handle this right now, this game, I don't want this particular thing in there. Talk to your players and be upfront about it and be like, hey, listen, like, it's okay to be willing to show a little vulnerability when you're like, I'm still learning this, or this is a mechanic I'm not really used to, I'm not comfortable with this. If it's okay with you guys, I'd really like this game to not have this particular feature or this particular class or race or whatever. Just be upfront.
So hopefully you here, Second Name Samurai says he's one of the bad DMs that doesn't allow flying at first level. Here is a great way around that. It has to be done in session 0. If there is some power that you have serious difficulties with at a certain level, and the PC or the player really wants to play that race, tell them that, work with them and come up with a scaled system of use of that. So right now, there's we didn't want to give flight along with everything else to the chitin. So we took a feature from barbarians, which allows them to fly for a few moments, to kind of flutter, and saying they've kind of grown out of the ability to fly. They don't need it anymore.
Because they're giant bugs.
They're giant bugs. The larger they grow, they're people-shaped as well. They just don't need flight as much as their ancestors did, but they still kind of have them.
Or it's just physiologically way more difficult to fly with the kind of wings that they've kept over the years.
Yeah. So you could say with somebody like an Aarakocra, you start with that. Like, look, you're still learning how to use. You haven't grown up into your wings yet. So you can flutter around at first level. At second level, you can do it twice a day. At third level, you can start doing it, but your fly speed is half. And then at 4th level or 5th level, when you hit into heroic tier, you then unlock your full flight. And that gives them the flavor of the flying without breaking the low-level campaign. And if they're okay with that and you're okay with that, do it. Now, as a DM, I would compensate them in some way. Maybe give them a +1 to a stat, or maybe a magic item or something simple early on to kind of compensate and make up for that lack of ability, because the Aarakocra don't get much else. That's pretty much all they get. And that's part of why they're balanced, is because they only get flying.
Well, if the other thing to keep in mind with that, with flight, is if you decide to do sort of a you don't know how to fly yet, if that doesn't make quite sense to you, you can talk to the player about maybe designing a backstory that involves that. Maybe they were never in a space where they could fly that much. It wasn't a common thing for these Aarakocra. They might have been geographically isolated for some reason. Like, you can come up with reasons, and that can help develop a backstory even. I did find it,
clipped.
Yeah, they're healing.
Yeah.
You know, you needed healing magic. You suddenly have a cleric in the party. Oh, you can fix my wings. I haven't used these forever. I don't know how to use them yet.
So if they want to play an Aarakocra for some other reason, I don't know, talk about being a flightless bird, maybe a penguin.
I want to be a penguin.
They can get a swim speed instead.
I love it.
Seriously, I mean, whatever. You know,
like Logan said,
different types of birds.
Logan, like you said, though, I would give them something else in addition to that. Like, only having a swim speed, like, there are multiple races that get that already. So either give them an incredibly fast swim speed, or you give them something else in addition.
Once again, this is a perfect opportunity to mention that PDF that you have that talks about balancing racial stats and has broken each one down. It gives fly a particular value, which I think is very high. I think the total character is like 6 points. I think fly is 3 of those. And swim speed is like 1.5 or something. So you can use that to balance it out and kind of figure out exactly what you want to do. That is the basis of all of the racial generations that we did. And I know people are still looking for the stats. We're going to work on that. We're going to try to decide what we want to do. It may one of the ideas floating around is it may only be bonus content on our site. That it may be one of those things that's it's for subscribers only. I don't know yet, but we're going to talk about that and have an answer. Hopefully, we'll definitely buy our subscription drive in April.
I know we've gotten a little bit into sort of in the weeds with just specifically Aarakocra as an example, though they are a very notorious example of banning something.
They're the biggest example. Whenever anybody talks about banning anything, if somebody says, "Oh, my DM banned stuff," I'm gonna be like, "Well, is Aarakocra one of them?" They're like, "Yes." It's almost always.
I will say this. I'm going to put something in chat. There's a discussion specifically about how do I keep an Aarakocra player in check with my game. And there is some really good stuff in here where it's like,
Can we talk about that language for a minute?
How do I keep my Aarakocra in check?
Yeah, that is very combative language.
Oh, yeah.
Step one, communicate. Talk to your player. You guys are friends outside the game. Remember that.
Well. More importantly, how do they as a DM set up challenging encounters? They seem to perceive an Aarakocra as like a get out of jail free card or a silver bullet in their combat situations. And a lot of the comments here are, no, it's not. One, he's the only one that can fly. Right. None of the other party can fly.
Focus on the other characters. If everyone else dies and the Aarakocra is the only one that's left, the next party is going to be like, what happened to your last party?
But some of these suggestions...
I was flying around, they died, sorry.
Some of these suggestions are just really good. I really like a lot of it. They talk about the idea of adding strong winds that need strength saves, like natural environmental things that might make it more difficult. Especially if they've been fighting for a while, people know they have an Aarakocra in their party. They're going to start, if someone's actually seeking a fight with your characters,
absolutely,
they start compensating for that. They have a bunch of rangers with flying monsters that they ride as mounts, or druids that have earthbind, or any sorts of things. I've said this before, small spaces like a dungeon where flying's not really something in their skill set. You don't have to punish the player for having an ability if you can work out interesting ways of augmenting. And Logan made a good point earlier that that can be exhausting to have to constantly DIY encounters.
Not just exhausting for the DM, but for the player. It gets very obnoxious when you're the only player that constantly has environmental impacts being thrown against you because you chose to play a flying character. You gave up a lot of other abilities. I would hate to see somebody go up against an orc and the orc crits and like, oh well, this monster doesn't take any extra damage from your critical, and every single time they crit, they don't take any extra damage from your critical. Or to play a Triton and be in the desert, and never be able to swim, or it would be very difficult very frustrating to be in those situations. I wouldn't want to play that character. And if that is what you're going to do, you need to talk about it in session 0. You need to be very clear that Aarakocra being unique will have a lot of challenges in combats. Now, if you're in someplace like Sharn and Eberron, wind in combat makes a lot of sense because you're thousands of feet above the earth, up where there's a ton of wind constantly. As a matter of fact, I believe the entire place is on an elemental connection, or a connection to the elemental plane of air. So it makes sense that there's a lot of wind in some place like Sharn. So sure, that makes sense. But to just be out randomly in the middle of anywhere, and then all of a sudden there's just this big wind gust that you haven't mentioned before, just because the Aarakocra is flying around, it can become very exhausting for the player.
Sure, I agree.
And for the DM.
Okay, so we'll be quick and enthusiastic for our beloved sponsors. We have some things we want to talk about really quick. Because we're at sponsor time. It's sponsor time.
Sponsor time. Yeah.
Okay, so you might notice in our layout we have I don't know if it's up right now, but it has been in the rotation. We are sponsored by Die Hard Dice, who are absolutely
That's right.
amazing. And
Die
they
Hard
were
Dice.
incredibly kind because
Get dicicles. I don't.
they are a really kick-ass dice manufacturer, and they are so proud of their materials and confident in their materials that they want to make sure that we could show off the merchandise that they create. So we actually have dice sets from them. I have a battle worn set right here, which is super pretty, and yes, and I have a blue one of those. It's very pretty. And sorry, I didn't mean to crackle in the microphone. So we are working together with them, and we've mentioned earlier in the show series, I guess, not just this show, that one of the goals with these conversations was to come up with scripts for short YouTube videos that kind of condense some of these subjects that we talk about. And we're going to be working with Die Hard Dice on their website. That's where a lot of our videos are going to premiere as we release them this year. So as we're releasing those, you will get
Hopefully
to watch
this month.
them. Hopefully this month.
Okay,
I'm
that's our
very
agreement.
confident. I'm very confident we will have at least a couple this month.
Yes.
I just meant
a couple this month.
I meant
Yes.
over the course
Throughout this year.
Yes, that's what
Yes.
I meant.
But someday, absolutely. No, absolutely. So you'll be able to see that content over on their site exclusively for about a week. If you want to watch it there, and then after that, you can come to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/a bunch of weird random letters. Just you can
search Discover RPG, or you can.
But if you'd like to
our...
go subscribe to that channel, even though we can no longer simulcast over there, I can't use that's a TM term. Since we can no longer restream over there because of Twitch rules and regulations, we will get those up over there at some point. But right now, I think we're moving them over to the Nerdsmith one. But we're gonna have our own DRPG channel for our videos, which we have.
I've been putting it on there.
Oh, you've been putting them over on DRPG?
Yeah.
Oh, look at you! You're awesome. Sorry,
I have initiative. Do I get
You've
a
done the
bonus?
thing.
Do I get bonus for initiative?
Yes, you get a bonus on
Thank you.
initiative in this show. I'll let you go first. Wait, I already do.
I don't know. Oh, good question. Van Hawk wanted to know if regular plastic dice and metal rice. Does metal rice taste different?
Metal rice doesn't taste very good.
Do they roll different? Metal versus plastic dice?
Yes, one has a tendency to destroy your tabletop, and one does not. No,
They
I
feel a
do
little
highly
different when you roll them at
recommend
the
getting
same
a dice roller.
time.
Yeah. Do they roll any different? No, not necessarily. They how they're made is a factor. There are better dice out there and there are worse dice. One of the things, if you're really concerned about balance in your dice, do not get opaque dice that you can't see through that are plastic, because there may be air pockets they can't compensate for. But for the most part, dice are dice.
I will say that
if there are any trends towards one number or another, realistically, you would need to roll thousands of times before you finally end up seeing it. They're really not that big of a deal.
Yeah. There's obviously cost differences between metal and plastic.
Oh, yes.
There's a bit more of an investment to have metal dice. I have been using my metal dice for probably a week, maybe a little more. And I will say it feels like I have been weight training. Plastic dice just feel like air in my hand now.
Yes.
I'm like, how does this have the authority to dictate anything?
Yeah.
Metal one just feels more substantial.
I used to have plastic dice. I've had plastic dice my whole life. They only started making metal dice recently that were affordable. The problem I had always had with plastic dice, especially in high school and things, when you're in precarious places role playing, is that they would hit the floor and they have a tendency to go. They would shoot across the room. You'd lose them, or worse. Several times I'd rolled dice and they hit the ground, they start bouncing, they would shatter or they would break.
Oh, wow.
Now these were cheaper sets of whatever you could find at the time. I don't think any of the current ones would do that, but or at least not easily. But so we'd run into situations like that. So I like metal dice for that. But I also like the heft. I like the feel of something in my hand, the weight of it. It just makes more sense to me. Also, I have I really enjoy getting things that are hard to get for other people. I know that sounds kind of weird. I like having things that are unique to me, and
What a hipster!
metal dice.
You're a
is,
dicer.
I'm a dicer. Metal dice is something not a lot of people have. Most people have plastic dice, so I like having metal dice for that. It's just me. I like having unique things. Which
You know how excited
now,
I am is to put my metal dice in my little
Yeah.
dragon bag. This is gonna feel awesome when I walk around with it.
Now there's there's two types of dice that Die Hard Dice sells. There's the polymer plastic dice and the metal ones. The metal ones they 3D design. They send them off to the printer or the manufacturer. The manufacturer makes them, sends them back. They do the coloring in house, the enameling, all of that. They make their own. Evidently, they make their own dice. Well, they buy the dice trays and they do the designs and things themselves. But the polymer ones they sell, the plastic ones are not their designs. They're just the same polymer ones that 99% of all dice companies have, even the big ones that you might think that you pay more for. But they're really they're the same dice. They're the same designs.
Todd and his team do paint some of their dice though.
Yes, some of the polymers they do paint, but the mostly
which is still very neat.
Oh, I don't have
my beloved first custom D20 that I bought. Like, just bought the D20 because it was pretty. Is the 6? The paint fell out of the 6, and I took white out, so I have this big smudge of white out. But I like feel bad taking it apart because I'm like, but it's like my first one. I might go back and paint it. I might take a little paintbrush and fill it in better.
Nice. So if you buy polymer dice, even from Die Hard Dice, most of the polymer dice out there are the same dice that every other place carries. So the point is, they're out there a lot. The dice, the Mythical line especially, the Die Hard has, only Die Hard sells those dice. So I like the idea that it's a unique thing that not every other dice company can have. And when it comes to the Mythic, if you do find similar dice anywhere else, they're not supposed to be doing that. That's technically Todd's design. So yeah, I like to go to the person that designed something. I like to deal with them directly as an artist myself, as somebody trying to create with my intellectual property. A design on a die is intellectual property, and I want to go with the person that originally did it. And the idea that they're manufacturers and they make their own, they don't just resell somebody else's designs, makes me very excited as well. So that's why we decided to go with Die Hard Dice. I really like their their whole style. That's Die Hard Dice for us. You can tell us what it means to you. If you want to, if you don't own a set of Die Hard Dice and you'd like to, there's a few different ways you can go about that. The best way is to go to dieharddice.com, put a bunch of dice in your cart, that you can afford. Go to when you go to check out, use the coupon code DRPG. Those 4 letters, DRPG, Discover RPG. DRPG, and you will get 15% off of your order. Now that's your first order or your next order. So even if you've purchased there before, you can use that to get off your next order. So that is the best way to do it. Otherwise, you can pay attention to this space right here. And sometime this month, we won't tell you when, but sometime this month, we are going to be giving away a metal size set of dice from Die Hard Dice. They have very generously donated a monthly set of dice to us to give away as our sponsors. And not just us, but 5 other shows on the network as well. Champions of the Earth, WAND Radio, Discover RPG, Countless Heroes, and Geek Thyself all are giving away a set of metal dice this month. So you got to tune into those to check out. Next month, you can tune into those 5 shows plus Shenanigans and Chaotic Goodness at least, and we're hoping to add at least one more show after that. So there are a lot of opportunities to get dice on the network. If you go to nerdsmith.org, are very proud to be a part of sponsor or a network, and you can discover all sorts of things there about how to do that. We're hoping that we'll get a banner up on the front page when the homepage is finally finished, the new one. But all the content pages work right now, even though it's under construction. The only thing that's not working right now are our contact forms. So go ahead and go over there. You can look at all the content, see all of that stuff. And we might even start putting maybe a little banner or something on them to talk about giveaways, dice giveaways or something.
Sure.
That'd be kind of neat. So we can start denoting that to you guys too. So anyway, thank you guys. We're not done. So
we're not done.
Yeah, that's
we
Die
are
Hard Dice.
not skipping
Sorry,
the
you got 11
challenge.
minutes.
Are you kidding
So,
me?
But anyway, that's Die Hard Dice. Again, go to dieharddice.com. Use DRPG for 15% off your order. And sorry to get a little. I don't like. I get so.
We're corporate shills, guys.
We're corporate shills. They're not a corporation.
Love their dice. Yeah, they're super. But it doesn't matter.
We're not.
They're a small band of.
We're shills nonetheless. I'll shill for a lot. Dice are one of those things. I'll shill for dice.
They're very cool. We have a ton of respect for them. They work really hard and have really cool ideas and are very generous with their time and with their products. And we definitely want to give them props where props are due. Yes,
they are amazing people, and we really want to show them support. So please go to Die Hard Dice to buy your next set of dice, whenever that is. Try them out. If you are not 100% satisfied, well,
don't tell us. Our contact forms are broken.
Yes, our contact forms are broken. You can't tell us. You can add us to Twitter, I guess, but
sure. Okay, so let's see if we can get through. We got 10 minutes.
Them. But tell us if you do have a set of Die Hard dice or you get one, please let us know how you like them. We'd be very excited to know. And I highly recommend the Mythica Aquamarine, either the platinum or the gold. Both are gorgeous. They are absolutely just
I like the Gothica.
The copper's nice, but the I don't know where mine is. Oh, there it is. There we go. My camera's very far away, so you're not gonna be able to see anything. So,
oh no, mine are Mythica too.
Gorgeous. So,
woo!
All right,
sponsor time done. Challenge time has begun.
Challenge time.
I'm super excited. I really love my. I have two. All right, so the challenge this week was to create a guild. A guild, if you are not aware, is a conglomeration of people that all sort of do the same thing. They're like a union. The idea is to guarantee people work and to give them a place to sell their wares or services. And there are lots of different types of guilds in common D&D parlance. There are thieves guilds. There are, I don't know, healing guilds. They're just merchant guilds, all sorts of stuff. So the challenge was just to make a fun guild that you thought was interesting. Since I made the challenge.
But you have two, so start with one of yours, and I'll do mine. Then you can have your
okay, I'm going to start with my less precious
ones.
Idea.
Okay, go ahead.
So I came up with this idea, partly riffing off of something that we have already talked about in a prequel to our campaign, a pest control guild, an urban pest control guild.
A pest control guild?
Yes, they keep it's pest control. It's so she doesn't get too excited about things.
There you go. It's like self-control.
A vermin and pest control guild for an urban setting. You have no, listen, they're humane. They employ two different tactics to get rid of, say, for example, yes, Rose is going to hate me, rats. If you want to get rid of an influx of rats, there are two things they do. This is partly inspired by the fact that I just watched a documentary about New York City's rat problem and how for 30 years there have been a citizens group who all own rat terriers that they go out at night and like hunt rats.
Nice.
They know they're not putting a big dent in the population, but it keeps the dogs doing something that they're specifically bred for, so it's healthy for the dogs, and they know they're doing a little bit. But this pest control guild does something a bit more humane. They're made of druids, but they're made of druids that do speak with dead. That's later. Speak with animals.
So you kill the rat, and then you talk with it.
Speak with animals in an attempt to convince the more reasonable nests of rats to just go somewhere else. Or they wild shape into like rat terriers and things, and they have enough self-control to not eat the rats, but they will just chase them into spaces that they then repopulates. They have like a farm upstate or something where they take the rats and they put them somewhere where they're not going to be as bad. But the idea of just this roaming druid group of like, hey, you should really, okay, they don't want to talk to me, and then they just turn into a rat terrier and chase them away. So it's terror tactics and trying to persuade them.
I just see wandering bands of people walking through the street with wands of fireballs just dropping down into the sewer grates every now and then, and just getting them all to run out in one big grate, this huge pile of rats just coming out at the end.
Gross.
Just line the last little place with grease and lube that you've taken from Matterhorny Mountain and just watch them all just slide across out down to the next village.
Anyway, so that was my first guild, my pest control guild, my urban pest control guild.
So mine came from one of our games, so you already know what it is, but I don't think you know much about it because we didn't talk a lot about it. But I came up with the idea of doing a realtors guild. I didn't come up with it. Somebody else came up with it. I took the idea from, I think it was Joe. But a realtor, maybe it was you. I don't remember who said it. But a realtor. I said
guild. Someone was a realtor.
Yeah, there was a realtor, and then somebody said something about a realtors guild. I think that would be a very cool thing that I've never heard of. This idea that there are these landlords that bond together to buy and sell property as kind of a little buying group and manage that. And that kind of now is exactly how I think in our Countless Heroes game, we came up with the idea for Lakeside. This very planned community was because of it's definitely in a medieval setting. It would be exactly what a portion of the city designed by committee would have looked like. It doesn't look like anything else. It's functional, but it's ugly as sin.
I love the generic term Lakeside. Everything in this goddamn city is Lakeside. What makes you so fucking special?
That's the point. I loved it.
It was tested.
It's all exactly perfect for a realtor guild. So this idea, and this is another one of those things, I had all of these things that kind of stupid property that's all lines and right angles, and every house is the same, and they all have the exact same size plot of land, and the layouts are all the same. In a medieval setting, this is a ridiculous concept.
Medieval, okay.
Well, I understand, but that's my point. It's meant to be ridiculous. This idea that you look at the city with all of these roads going everywhere, and then all of a sudden you've got this prim little proper suburb, and they called it Lakeside when literally everything in the city is Lakeside. To one lake or another. There's nothing that is the Temple District is the only district that doesn't have something lakeside. And this idea that they're pretentious enough to call it that. And then on top of all that, now it makes sense that it was built by this guild of realtors. The other side of that is I thought it'd be great if they did a lot of we're going to go show this property, or this property is empty. They know which properties are empty, so they could, if they want to go more unscrupulous, they could use it for a lot of unscrupulous sorts of activities, or even brothel-esque activities.
You just made me realize that they should have a Better Homes magazine. Oh, these people, when they're on the cover this week, it's always the same fucking house-looking thing.
Yes.
Oh, they put a wreath on their door. That's so avant-garde of them. I very much enjoy that idea.
It's called a callback, Tessa. Just you can calm down. I'm talking about lube too much.
Okay, so my second idea, credit to Andy for coming up with the basic concept, but I came up with the terrible name.
Does your husband know about Andy?
He might be slightly aware of him. They do share a body. That was way funnier than I meant it to be.
Andy's been in your husband's pants.
Anyway, the other one, this was Andy's idea. We were talking about the idea of a guild, and we thought, well, Eberron, we were hearing Keith David at Rose City Comic Con talking about Keith Baker.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, talking about Eberron and mage rights in Eberron.
Yeah.
The idea of NPCs that only have very specific magic skills. So we thought maybe make a guild that is completely revolving around a particular low-level spell service that they could do for people. So this is a guild
like
that
sanitation.
Well, this is a guild. Yeah, we talked about that idea, like street cleaners and stuff. But this is a guild entirely revolving around the idea of casting Identify. That they provide that identification service for people. But more importantly, the way that they're able to...
they can do it through ritual, I guess.
Well, it's a low-level spell, but what the other thing this guild does is they have a monopoly on the pearl industry. So I came up with this idea that they're a guild of, you're going to love this, aquatic races. I came up with sea turtles. You shut your mouth, it's a beautiful thing. but they're like sea elves and these sea turtles and stuff, and they're pearl divers, and they have a monopoly on the pearl industry, and you need to have a pearl that's worth 100 gold to cast Identify, and so they hike up the price of pearls in the city. You have to go to them for service, and I was calling them the half shell mages because they're turtles and pearls come from oysters. I was very proud of myself.
You're sitting here, and I just wanted to go. I thought you were going to come up with an oyster race, and they just had pearls come out of their butts or something. I was just that's just gross. But then I'm like, can Triton do that? And I'm like, whoa. But can we please... They don't get
tonsil stones, there's just pearls.
Oh, God. Can we please, like Zoidberg, just, evidently I make jewelry. Can we please get away from the idea that the value of something matters? That I can take a tiny pea-sized pearl and say that it's worth 100 gold and all of a sudden it's good enough for that spell? I want to go through all of the spell components that cost a gold value, and I want to place an actual value on this. I've tried to do this in game by saying, if you change the gold value, there's a few online calculators that the people have come with the idea that based on this and this, we think gold should equal this in our real world roughly for luxury goods. Sure. So you take that, and you're talking about a 5,000 gold point diamond being 3 or 4 carats of diamond. That's huge. That's a very expensive 25,000 gold and not in the best condition diamond that we've got. Now, it can be rough. It doesn't have to be cut. But my point is, I want to get away from this idea that the value of something matters, because people get stuck on that. People especially new players go, oh, it's got to be worth 100 gold. Well, that's just a rough estimation of what it looks like of the type of thing, because we can't define that. But I'm wondering if there's a better system we can come up with. And that's something we should talk about another time. So you should add that to our list, because that frustrates me, the crap out of me. It's like, oh, oh, hey, buddy, here, this diamond's worth 5,000 gold. Give me $5,000 for it. It's like, no, it's not. How do you know? Well, what is it worth in this city versus that city? It's right. Like, and what can you discount on?
There is that rule.
Diamonds aren't actually that valuable.
Well, there is that rule.
Says it's hold on D&D.
There's that rule with spellcasting that you can use your arcane focus to cast a spell as long as it doesn't have a monetary value on the material component.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's the one area of D&D that it just feels like there may not be a better system, because Jeremy Crawford, Mike Merles, and Chris Perkins couldn't come up with something. Fuck me, I'm not gonna be able to. But the fact is, we've had this system since Gygax, and it's frustrating because it doesn't make sense. It does not make sense at all.
I would love to know the justification, and maybe it's written somewhere. I'd like to know the justification for spells that have consumable components versus spells that have monetary components versus spells that don't. I wonder if it's just a gatekeeping for how powerful they think the spell is, or how prone to spamming it is. I'm not sure. I have to assume that's part of it.
I'm sure that is.
They already did a hand wave with the component stuff, so
but that's a good thing. That would be something, if we could ever get Jeremy Crawford or Mike Merles on the show, we should ask them. That is an excellent and yes, we have that call in. That is an excellent sort of question to ask, because that is a very big, that had to be something they looked at, and I'm just thinking they couldn't come up with something better. There may not be a better way to describe it without creating a series of individual systems of value of things, because you start building an entire economy system at that point. You can't say it's got to be a 4-carat diamond. Nobody knows what that's worth. So it's got to be this kind of, it's got to be a diamond worth 5,000 gold, because that's the currency we use to judge everything in game. The problem is basing your currency on that. If you want to have any sort of realism in general, economies fluctuate.
All right. Well, we have one more subject, but we can certainly hold off until next week to talk about.
Yeah, we're already over, so we need to
So
hold off on Funhouse Rules, which was what was that again?
Next week, we're going to talk about reflavoring, specifically reflavoring classes. How to do something more unique outside of a rules as written form of a particular class. I've got some really fun examples that I've actually used in practice, and we can talk about, why you shouldn't be afraid to reflavor within reason. So yeah.
Perfect. Okay.
Thank you guys so much for watching.
Thank you so much for being here.
It has been a pleasure spending the afternoon with you.
I'm gonna go do our little boogie woogie here.
Oh, that's right. Always have a dance break.
We got a few people here. We're gonna go and look at doing a real quick.
There will be a point during the show in which I will be doing a haul, let's call it a loot haul, of all my Kickstarters coming to roost, because I think this year is when at least 2 of my D&D miniature Kickstarters come in. So I will be showing off all the figures I haven't painted yet, and it will take a very long time for me to paint.
I had a few things I could show off.
Well, but I'll be getting a couple of new sets with stuff, with the Kickstarters coming in. Yes, Secondhand Samurai, thank you so much. Tonight at 7 p.m. Pacific, there is going to be the 100th episode of Countless Heroes, our West Marches style game that Logan DMs and I play in. I will not be in tonight. I had enough nightmares for one day yesterday.
Oh, yes.
But I'll be back for more punishment later this week.
Yeah, so 100th episode tonight in 23 weeks. You do the math. We will be giving away our dice set tonight. We don't know how, where, we don't know what. And it is any metal dice set that you can find on Die Hard Dice. So we will give away literally, you can have any one set you want, any set of polymer dice. Yes. Doesn't matter what the price is, they are expensive. So not expensive, but they are.
Any set of metal dice?
They are a good value. Any set, well, you can get polymer if you want.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, you can get anything you want. I mean,
Any set of dice.
You want a dice tray, you could have a dice tray, I'm sure. I don't think that they would mind. One item from the site, but the most valuable, the best, the
most impressive,
nicest, the most fun, and most impressive. And the idea that they want to get out there is those dice. But I don't know why you'd want to pass up on those metal dice, especially the Mythica line. Those are the newest, the greatest, and they are the most unique, and you will be very impressed.
I love it. I rolled a nat 20 last night on this sucker.
I rolled double nat 20s. I got 2 of the iron, and they both came up 20 on an advantage roll. So
I really wanted you to screw us over.
All right, let's go do this. We're going to go say hi to Susanna Grace. She's playing a video game, but there's nobody else doing anything else. But Susanna Grace is amazing.
I played a game with her the other day.
Angela played a game with her the other day, and we're hoping to have her on some of our shows too at some point here soon. So.
You should definitely check out later. They do play a Witcher game, which I will be guesting on in the near future. I'm very excited about.
So come along with
Susanna
us,
Grace and her friends are awesome.
And we'll go make her day hopefully. So alrighty, let's go. All right, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye. Be good to each other.